3 weeks later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the Meridian and watched something that no human had ever seen before. A dragon teaching her crew advanced quantum mathematics using interpretive dance. Star that burns against darkness had recovered completely, but rather than leaving, had asked to accompany them back to human space. The request had caused a minor diplomatic crisis until the dragon had demonstrated something that changed everything. It had sung to their ship's computer, not communicated through mathematical concepts, but literally sang to the artificial intelligence. Within hours, the ship's navigation system had evolved by centuries. Their engines were running at 300% normal efficiency without any mechanical modifications. Most incredibly, their communication array was now somehow connected to the quantum communications network used by the 17 freed worlds. "Captain," Marcus called from his station, his voice tight with excitement and a little fear. "We're receiving a transmission. It's from Earth." Sarah hurried to the communication station. The message was from Admiral Chun, her uncle and one of Earth's most senior military commanders. His face appeared on the screen, and Sarah immediately noticed he looked older than when she'd last seen him. "Sarah, I need you to listen very carefully. 3 days ago, every space-capable nation on Earth received the same message simultaneously. It came through quantum channels we didn't even know existed. The message contained star charts showing the location of 17 worlds that want to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. It also contained detailed specifications for technology that could advance our civilization by centuries." Sarah felt her stomach drop. Star that burns against darkness had kept its promise about sharing the locations of the free worlds. But clearly it had done much more than that. The Admiral continued. The message claimed that humanity had provided sanctuary and medical aid to a representative of these worlds, and that we were being invited to join their coalition based on our demonstrated character and capabilities. "Sarah, what the hell did you do out there?" Before Sarah could answer, Star that burns against darkness approached the communication station. The dragon had learned to move carefully within the ship's corridors, though it still had to duck through doorways designed for beings less than a tenth its size. The reaction on Admiral Chen's face when he saw the dragon was priceless. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again without sound. "Uncle," Sarah said calmly, "I'd like you to meet Star that burns against darkness. Formerly known as the Flame of Freedom, war hero of 17 worlds and new friend to humanity. Star, this is Admiral Chun of the Earth Defense Force." The dragon looked directly into the communication pickup and did something unprecedented. It spoke in perfect English. "Admiral Chun," its voice was like distant thunder mixed with music. "Your niece and her crew have provided my family with assistance when we faced death. In the cultures of the free worlds, such aid creates bonds that transcend species. Humanity has been accepted as the 18th member of our coalition." Admiral Chun sat down heavily. Sarah could see military officials moving frantically in the background of the transmission. "You can speak our language?" the Admiral said weakly. "I can speak any language after hearing it for sufficient time. This is not unusual among my people." "What is unusual?" The dragon paused, its golden eyes fixing on the camera with an intensity that made Sarah shiver. "What is unusual is meeting a species that would risk their lives to save strangers without hope of reward." "I don't understand." Star that burns against darkness looked at Sarah, seeking permission. She nodded. "Admiral Chun, in the 17,000 years since my people achieved spaceflight, we have encountered over 2,000 distinct intelligent species. Of those, exactly 3 have ever provided assistance to individuals of another species without first negotiating terms, establishing hierarchies, or ensuring their own safety." The Admiral leaned forward. 3? The crystalline minds of Andromeda, who exist as pure energy and cannot be harmed by physical beings. The collective of Tau Ceti, who view all life as extensions of themselves. And now, humanity. Sarah felt something cold creep up her spine. What about the other species? The thousands of others? They follow what the galaxy considers normal behavior. They negotiate. They establish dominance. They calculate risk versus reward. They are practical. The dragon's tone held something that might have been sadness. The hegemony rules most of known space because they are the most practical of all. They never act without guaranteed benefit to themselves. Emily had joined them at the communication station. Are you saying that humans are unusual because we helped you without expecting anything in return? Dr. Santos, you are unusual because you helped me despite expecting to gain nothing and lose everything. Your captain removed her environmental protection in a potentially deadly atmosphere to communicate with a being that could have killed her with a thought. Engineer Rodriguez risked her ship's structural integrity to build an untested transport system. Navigator Webb provided star charts showing your own home system to a creature he had known for mere hours. Marcus looked embarrassed. Those charts were in our navigation computer anyway. You could have accessed them if you wanted? Yes, the dragon agreed. But I did not want to. Taking such information without permission would have been theft. You offered it freely, along with your trust. Its great head turned to encompass all of them. In 17,000 years, we have never encountered beings who consistently choose hope over fear, generosity over prudence, trust over suspicion. Admiral Chun's voice was quiet when he spoke again. What does this mean for humanity? Star that burns against darkness straightened to its full height within the cargo bay. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that resonated through the ship's hull. It means that the galaxy is about to discover something new. For millennia, advancement has been driven by conquest, exploitation, and the practical calculation of power. The strong rule the weak, the clever exploit the foolish, the cautious survive while the generous perish. The dragon's scales began to shimmer with patterns Sarah had never seen before. But there is another way to grow strong. The free worlds learned this from my people when we chose freedom over slavery, even at the cost of exile and hardship. Now humanity will teach the galaxy that kindness is not weakness, that trust can be rewarded, and that sometimes the most practical thing is to be impractical. One of the hatchlings, Sarah had started calling it. Harmony, because of its beautiful songs, approached and began to glow with the same patterns as its parent. Then another hatchling joined in, then another. Soon all 37 young dragons were creating a light show that painted the cargo bay in moving constellations. What are they doing? Emily asked, pulling out her scanner. They are singing the song of new worlds, Star that burns against darkness replied. It has not been heard for 3,000 years. They sing it for humanity, the first species to join the free worlds, not through conquest or negotiation, but through an act of compassion. The Admiral's image flickered as quantum interference from the dragon's song affected their communication system. When it stabilized, his expression had changed from confusion to wonder. Admiral, Sarah said, I need you to know that everything is about to change. The technology that was transmitted to Earth is just the beginning. The free worlds have been preparing for something for centuries. They've been waiting for the right moment, the right catalyst. What kind of catalyst? Star that burns against darkness answered. A species that proves it's possible to be both advanced and ethical. The hegemony maintains control because most beings believe that power requires ruthlessness. But you have shown that strength can come from unity, that security can come from trust, and that the best way to protect yourself is to protect others. The implications hit Sarah like a physical force. We're not just joining a coalition. We're starting a revolution. The revolution has already begun, the dragon said. The 17 worlds have been quietly building technology, gathering resources and waiting for the right moment to challenge hegemony rule. That moment is now. Humanity will be the proof that the galaxy can choose a different path. Admiral Chun was making notes on something off-screen. What do you need from us? Nothing, Star that burns against darkness replied, and Sarah could hear the smile in its voice. You have already given us everything. You have shown that you are willing to help strangers, to risk your lives for others, to trust without guarantee of reward. That is not something that can be taught or manufactured. It is what you are? Emily looked up from her scanner. Admiral, you need to see these readings. The quantum patterns the hatchlings are generating, they're not just songs. They're mathematical formulas. Specifically, they're instructions for building things. Starships that can travel between galaxies. Medical technology that can heal any wound. Energy systems that could power entire worlds. The young ones are composing the future, Star That Burns Against Darkness explained. Each song is a blueprint, a gift to the species that saved their parent. By the time we reach Earth space, they will have created technologies that surpass anything the hegemony possesses. Sarah watched the light show continue, understanding dawning on her. This isn't... The next 6 hours became a masterclass in human stubbornness and improvisation. Moving a 60-meter dying dragon from an asteroid, crater to a cargo ship designed for hauling or... required the kind of creative engineering that humans were famous for throughout known. Space Chief Engineer Rodriguez had initially laughed when Sarah explained the situation over the comm. Then she'd gone very quiet. Then she'd started swearing in 3 languages. Finally, she'd said, "Give me 2 hours and every spare piece of metal we have aboard." While Rodriguez worked miracles with gravity generators and reinforcement beams, Dr. Santos focused on the medical challenge. The energy parasite wasn't just feeding on the dragon's life force, it was converting that energy into something toxic, poisoning the creature from within. "It's elegant in a horrible way," Emily explained to Sarah as they waited for the transport preparations. "The parasite doesn't just kill, it makes sure the victim suffers." This was definitely created as a biological weapon. The dragon, who had somehow communicated that its name translated roughly to Star That Burns Against Darkness, watched their preparations with those incredible golden eyes. Its breathing had become labored, and the bioluminescent patterns along its scales were fading. The hatchlings had arranged themselves in a protective circle around their parent. Sarah noticed they moved with military precision despite their obvious youth. When one strayed too far, another would gently guide it back to position. These weren't just animals, they were an organized unit. "Captain," Marcus called from where he was working on the gravity lifting system, "I've been thinking about the timeline here. If this dragon led an uprising that freed 17 worlds, the hegemony would have sent everything they had to recapture or kill it. How did it escape?" Star That Burns Against Darkness made another series of mathematical communications. Images flashed in their minds, massive space battles, dying worlds, desperate escapes through hyperspace rifts that shouldn't have been survivable. "It didn't just escape," Emily translated, her voice full of awe. "It created a new hyperspace route, one that bypassed all known navigation markers. The mathematical concepts it's showing us. We're centuries away from understanding that level of spatial manipulation." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the asteroid's thin atmosphere. "So if the hegemony finds this place... they'll find a new hyperspace route straight to the outer colonies," Marcus finished grimly. "Including Earth." The dragon seemed to understand their concern. Its communication this time was tinged with regret and determination. "Hide, protect, sacrifice for the small flame spirits." "It's not just hiding from the hegemony," Sarah realized. "It's protecting us. The route it created could revolutionize space travel, but it's keeping the secret to protect less advanced species." Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. "Transport system is ready, Captain. Fair warning, this is either going to be the most beautiful piece of engineering in human history, or the most spectacular failure. 50-50 odds." They spent the next hour carefully maneuvering Star That Burns Against Darkness onto the gravity platform Rodriguez had constructed. The dragon was weak but cooperative, seeming to understand that this was its only chance for survival. Its hatchlings followed, making soft musical sounds that Sarah was beginning to recognize as songs of encouragement. The transfer to the Meridian went smoother than anyone had expected. Rodriguez had essentially turned Cargo Bay 7 into a massive medical facility, complete with life support systems designed for their new patients' unique biology. The quantum disruption field generator hummed at the center of it all, its blue glow casting strange shadows on the bulkheads. "All right," Emily said, checking her equipment one final time. "The theory is sound. The quantum field should disrupt the energy parasite's molecular structure without harming the host. But I've never attempted something like this on a living being this large." Star that burns against darkness looked at Emily and communicated pure trust. After everything its species had suffered at the hands of more advanced civilizations, it was willing to put its life in the hands of creatures it had known for less than a day. "No pressure," Emily muttered. Then activated the field. The results were immediate and dramatic. The parasite, invisible to normal sensors, suddenly became visible as it was ripped away from the dragon's life force. It writhed in the air like a thing of living shadow, then dissolved into quantum static and disappeared. Star dash, that dash burns dash against dash darkness, convulsed once, twice, then lay still. For a terrifying moment, Sarah thought they had killed it. Then the dragon's eyes opened, brighter than before, and its scales began to shimmer with renewed luminescence. The healing was rapid and stunning to watch. The massive wound along the creature's flank began to close, new scales growing to replace the damaged ones. Within an hour, Star that burns against darkness was sitting upright, its great head moving as it examined its surroundings. The hatchlings had been watching the entire procedure in silence. Now they erupted into what could only be called celebration. They sang. There was no other word for the harmonious sounds they made, and their scales flickered with patterns of joy and relief. "That was incredible," Emily said, checking her readings. "Its cellular regeneration rate is off the charts. The quantum disruption didn't just remove the parasite, it somehow boosted its natural healing abilities." Star that burns against darkness turned to look at Sarah, this time. Its communication was more complex than anything they had received before. Mathematical concepts flowed through their minds, but underneath was something deeper, emotion, memory, and a profound sense of debt. It showed them images of its own people, dragons like itself, but enslaved and forced to fight in the hegemony's wars. It showed them the moment it had broken free from their control, turning its fire against those who had made it a weapon. It showed them the desperate flight across the galaxy, pregnant with eggs and seeking nothing more than a place where its children could grow up, free. And it showed them what it had never shown any other species, the location of the 17 worlds it had. "Freed, my God," Marcus whispered. "It's offering us alliance coordinates. Those worlds. They're completely outside hegemony space, a free coalition that we never knew existed." But Star that burns against darkness wasn't finished. It communicated more concepts: gratitude beyond measure, trust earned through actions rather than words, and something that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat: pack bond, family acceptance, hatchling protection. "It's adopting us," Emily said in wonder. "Not just accepting our help, but claiming us as family." The implications were staggering. This creature was one of the most feared weapons in galactic history. The hegemony had spent decades trying to create and control beings like it, and now it was offering humanity something that had never been given to any other species: true partnership with a creature that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Sarah looked around the cargo bay at her crew. They had come out here to mine asteroids and make enough money to upgrade their ship. Instead, they had stumbled into something that could change the course of human history. "What do we do now?" Marcus asked quietly. Before Sarah could answer, Star that burns against darkness stood up. Even in the large cargo bay, it had to keep its head lowered to avoid the ceiling. It moved to where the hatchlings were gathered and made a series of soft sounds. One by one, the young dragons approached the humans. The first hatchling, the one that had touched Sarah's hand on the asteroid, came directly to her. It looked up with eyes that held ancient wisdom despite its youth, then did something that made Sarah's heart skip a beat. It sang, not the celebration songs from before, but something new. something that somehow incorporated the rhythms of human speech, the cadence of their breathing, the sound of their heartbeats. It was creating a song about them, about the moment when strangers had become family. One by one, each hatchling sang their own version. 37 unique songs, each capturing something different about the humans who had saved their parent. Emily wept openly as she listened. Marcus recorded everything, knowing that these songs would be studied for centuries. Rodriguez, who had come down from engineering to see the results of her work, stood speechless as a hatchling sang what could only be described as an ode to creative problem-solving. Star that burns against darkness watched its children with obvious pride, then turned to Sarah. Its final communication of the day was simple but profound. Children of distant star, you have given gift beyond naming. In return, offer truth-sharing, skypath knowledge, alliance with freedom worlds. But greatest gift already given, hope for tomorrow-fire. Sarah understood. They had given this ancient creature and its children something more valuable than medical treatment or safe shelter. They had given them hope for the future. What do we tell Earth? Emily asked. How do we explain that we've just formed humanity's first interstellar alliance? Sarah looked at the magnificent creature that now considered them family, at the hatchlings that were already beginning to follow her crew members around like curious puppies, at the star charts floating in her mind that showed the locations of 17 free worlds waiting to meet them. We tell them the truth, she said. We tell them that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is show kindness. The cargo ship Meridian drifted through the asteroid field, like a metal whale swimming through a graveyard of shattered moons. Captain Sarah Chun pressed her face against the observation deck's reinforced glass, watching the rocky debris tumble past in the dim light of the distant star. Her crew of 12 humans had been mining rare minerals in this forgotten corner of the galaxy for 3 months, far from any major shipping lanes or settlements. Captain, we're picking up something strange on the long-range scanners, called out Marcus Webb, her navigation officer. His voice carried an edge of confusion that made Sarah turn away from the window. She walked across the bridge, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor. The ship's artificial gravity was set to Earth normal, but old habits died hard when you'd spent years working in zero-G environments. Define strange, Marcus. Biosignatures. Massive ones. About 2 clicks northeast of our current position. Tucked into a crater on asteroid designation Eco 7, Marcus tapped his console, bringing up a 3-dimensional hologram of the surrounding space. Red dots pulsed within the outline of a particularly large asteroid. The readings don't match anything in our databases. Dr. Emily Santos, the ship's xenobiologist, looked up from her research station. The biosignatures out here? That's impossible. This system has been dead for millions of years. The star went through its red giant phase eons ago and sterilized everything within 50 astronomical units. Sarah studied the hologram, her dark eyes narrowing. As captain of a mining vessel, she'd learned to trust her instincts. Sometimes the most valuable discoveries came from investigating anomalies that didn't belong. How big are we talking? The largest signature is roughly 60 meters long. The smaller ones. Marcus paused, double-checking his readings. Captain, there are dozens of smaller signatures clustered around the big one, each about the size of a shuttle pod. 60 meters? Emily stood up so quickly her chair spun backward. That would make it one of the largest life forms ever documented. Larger than the crystal whales of Andorian Prime? Sarah made her decision. She'd been mining asteroids for 15 years, and nothing surprised her anymore. Well, almost nothing. Change course for Eco 7, but keep us at a safe distance until we know what we're dealing with. The Meridian adjusted its trajectory, its ion drives humming quietly. Within an hour, they were close enough to get detailed sensor readings of the asteroid. What they discovered defied explanation. Captain, Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. The crater isn't natural. Something carved it out. The walls are smooth, almost polished. And the biosignatures? They're not just alive. They're in distress. Emily had moved to the sensor station, her fingers flying across the controls. The electromagnetic patterns suggest extreme pain and exhaustion from the large signature. The smaller ones are emitting what can only be described as distress calls. Subsonic frequencies repeated in complex patterns. Could they be sentient? Sarah asked. The patterns are too sophisticated for simple animal communication. This is language, Captain. Primitive, but definitely structured communication. Sarah stared at the asteroid on the main screen. Something was alive in there, something huge and hurt, surrounded by smaller creatures that were calling for help. Every instinct screamed at her to plot a course away from this place. Whatever could injure a 60-meter life form was nothing she wanted to encounter with a lightly armed mining ship, but the smaller signatures. If they were young, if they were helpless? Marcus, how long until our mining permits expire? 2 weeks, Captain. And how much rare earth have we extracted? About 60% of our projected quota. Sarah nodded slowly. The company would be unhappy, but they wouldn't go bankrupt. Prep the shuttle. Emily, grab your xenobiology kit. Marcus, you're with us. The rest of the crew maintains position and keeps the engines warm. Captain, Emily said, her voice tight with concern, we have no idea what we're dealing with. Standard first contact protocols assume we're dealing with a stable situation. Sarah interrupted. Something is dying in there. Multiple somethings. And if we can help? She paused, thinking of her daughter back on Earth, imagining how she'd want someone to respond if roles were reversed. We're going to help. 20 minutes later, the shuttle Hermes detached from the Meridian and approached the asteroid. The crater was indeed artificial, carved with precision that spoke of intelligence and purpose. As they descended into the cavity, their lights illuminated walls covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change in the dancing shadows. My God, Emily breathed. This isn't just a shelter. It's decorated. Those symbols, they're telling a story. Marcus piloted the shuttle to a landing on a relatively flat section of the crater floor. The moment they touched down, vibrations traveled through the rocky ground. Something massive was moving nearby. They suited up in their environmental gear and activated the shuttle's external floodlights. What they saw would remain burned into their memories for the rest of their lives. The creature was magnificent and terrible. Its hide shimmered with scales that reflected their lights in prismatic patterns of deep purple and silver. 6 limbs ended in claws that could have torn through starship hull plating. Wings that spanned 40 meters were folded against its serpentine body. Its head was the size of a ground car, with intelligent eyes that gleamed like molten gold, and it was dying. A massive wound ran along its left flank, exposing internal organs that pulsed with bioluminescent fluid. The blood, if it could be called blood, had crystallized in the asteroid's thin atmosphere, forming geometric patterns that looked almost decorative around the creature. 37 smaller versions huddled together. They were each about 3 meters long, their scales dulled with hunger and fear. When the humans approached, the hatchlings made sounds that needed no translation. They were crying. The adult creature, Sarah couldn't think of it as anything but a dragon, despite knowing that was an Earth concept, turned its great head toward them. Its eyes held intelligence, pain, and something that might have been hope. Dr. Santos was scanning frantically with her equipment. Captain, the wound is infected with some kind of energy parasite. It's feeding on the creature's life force. At this rate, it has maybe 6 hours left. What about the young ones? Malnourished but stable. They appear to be completely dependent on the adult for food. If it dies? Sarah understood. 37 intelligent creatures would slowly starve to death, alone in the dark. She looked into the dragon's eyes and saw a parent's desperation. Can we help it? Emily looked at her scanner readings. The energy parasite is unlike anything in our databases, but it's still a living organism. If we could find a way to disrupt its life cycle. She paused, thinking. Captain, our ship's medical bay has a quantum disruption field generator. It's designed for removing quantum tumors from human patients, but theoretically it might work on an energy parasite. It's possible, but we'd have to transport the creature to our ship or bring the medical equipment here. Either option is incredibly dangerous. Marcus had been quiet, but now he spoke up. Captain, there's something else. I've been analyzing the symbols on the crater walls. They're not just decorative. They're a warning. Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. What kind of warning? This creature. It's not native to this system. According to the symbols, it's from the Magellan Cluster. Do you know what lives in the Magellan Cluster, Captain? Sarah did know. Every spacer did. The Magellan Cluster was home to the Hegemony, a coalition of species that considered themselves the rightful rulers of the galaxy. They were technologically advanced, militarily superior, and absolutely ruthless in their treatment of lesser species. It's a refugee, she said softly. More than that, Marcus continued. The symbols describe a great war. This creature, it was a hegemony war beast, one of their most powerful weapons, but it turned against them. The symbols call it the Flame of Freedom and say it led an uprising that freed 17 enslaved worlds. Emily lowered her scanner. So it's not just any creature. It's a war hero. Sarah looked at the dragon again, seeing it with new eyes. This being had risked everything to free enslaved populations. It had escaped across light years of space to this dead system, seeking only a place to raise its young in peace. And now it was dying, not from battle wounds, but from what looked like a deliberate biological weapon. One of the hatchlings approached them cautiously. It made soft chirping sounds and extended one small claw toward Sarah's gloved hand. Despite everything she knew about alien contact protocols, despite the fact that this creature's parent could incinerate her with a thought, Sarah reached out and gently touched the offered claw. The hatchling's scales were warm even through her suit's gloves. Captain, Emily said urgently, the adult's vital signs are deteriorating faster. If we're going to do something, it has to be now. Sarah made perhaps the most important decision of her life. She activated her suit's communication system and tried something that went against all common sense. She removed her helmet. The asteroid's atmosphere was thin but breathable, according to their scans. The air was cold and tasted of metal and ozone. She looked directly into the dragon's golden eyes and spoke in the clear, simple words she might use.